Do you want to develop a sharper mind? Then start with the essentials. Speak less and observe more. You don't need to go around sharing your thoughts with everyone. In fact, the less others know about what you're thinking, the more freely you'll be able to move. The ancient Stoic philosophers already understood something that many today don't even suspect. True wisdom doesn't raise its voice, it whispers. It shows itself through discreet actions, silent choices, and the strength of someone who has no need to prove anything to anyone. Today we're surrounded by people who want to appear intelligent, who rush to share their opinion, to shine, to show off all they've learned. But those who are truly wise are the ones who know when to stay silent, when to walk away gracefully, and above all, who have discovered the immense power of silence. And that's exactly what we'll be diving into today. I've prepared 10 Stoic teachings that, if you choose to apply them consistently, will make you wiser, more calculated, and without a doubt, much more respected. Don't expect any miraculous solutions. What you'll hear here are ancient principles, validated across the centuries, that remain effective because they speak to the core of what it means to be human. Each of these lessons is like a master key, a small mental shift that can completely transform how you move through the world. And the best part is, you don't need to tell anyone that you're practicing this. It's enough that you understand it, treasure it, and put it into motion at the right moment. One important warning: don't skip any part, because the 10th secret is the most powerful of all. It's the final jewel, the key that separates those who merely consume content from those who actually take a step forward in their personal evolution. So right now, do what a truly wise person would do. Turn off the external noise, focus your attention here, and allow this knowledge to gradually transform the way you walk through life. Before we begin, if this is your first time here, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. That way, you'll keep receiving content like this that can help you live with more meaning and purpose. First, never reveal your plans too soon. Have you ever felt that almost irresistible urge to tell someone your plans the moment a good idea crosses your mind? As if simply sharing it would automatically make it real. As if saying it out loud would give it form, weight, and start bringing it into existence. However, Stoic thought suggests the exact opposite. Reflect before speaking. Remain silent while everything is still just an intention. The Stoics believed that virtue is shown through actions, not words. Epictetus stated it clearly. We shouldn't brag about what we've already achieved, much less about what we haven't even begun. When we reveal our plans too early, we open the door to unnecessary judgment, external pressure, empty advice, or even envy disguised as good intentions. And most dangerously, we risk deceiving ourselves, believing that talking is the same as acting. This is a common mistake. When we tell someone about our goals, we get a small rush of satisfaction, as if we're already making progress toward the finish line. But we're not. We're still in the intention phase. And an intention without action changes nothing. That's why the wise guard their projects the way a warrior holds their sword, with determination. They don't show off, they don't boast, and they don't get ahead of themselves. They execute. Keeping your goals to yourself isn't cowardice, it's a smart strategy. Not everyone has the capacity to understand your vision. Not everyone will be happy for your success. And often you yourself aren't entirely clear on what you're building. That's why it's better to work in silence. Shape your ideas in the shadows, make mistakes, learn, adjust, and start over, without having to answer to anyone. By choosing silence, you're also choosing to protect your energy. You avoid distractions, keep unnecessary intrusions at bay, and save yourself the emotional drain of explaining something that's still a work in progress. And when the time comes for your actions to speak for themselves, you won't need to explain anything. The results will speak for you. The Stoic understands that they don't need external validation to walk the path they believe is right. They know there is power in staying silent and wisdom in guarding what is still taking shape. So before sharing your plans with the world, ask yourself this: is this truly ready to come to light, or is it still germinating like a seed that needs care before it can bloom? Be more cautious about what you reveal, not out of fear, but out of good judgment. Allow your efforts to bear fruit at the right time. Until then, keep moving forward quietly, with discipline, patience, and clarity. That is the attitude of someone who truly knows where they're headed. Second, master your reactions, especially when you're furious. Anger is a natural emotion, we all experience it. It's an impulse that arises almost without warning, like a spark trying to ignite a fire within us. But it's not the fire itself that defines us, it's what we choose to do with it. The Stoics understood this perfectly. To them, true strength didn't lie in striking back in rage, but in having the courage to govern oneself. Reacting with anger is easy. Anyone can do it. But controlling that impulse and responding with wisdom, now that is a true act of greatness. Seneca, one of the most influential thinkers of Stoicism, wrote extensively about anger. To him, it was the most harmful emotion because it leads us to say and do things we would never consider in a state of calm. Anger clouds our judgment, makes us prisoners of fleeting impulses, and almost always, when it finally fades, the only thing left is regret. For having said too much, for hurting someone who didn't deserve it, or for making rushed decisions. Mastering your reactions doesn't mean hiding what you feel or pretending everything is fine. It means being aware of what's happening inside you, taking a deep breath, and choosing how to act with full clarity. It's turning that brief space between what happens and what you do into a place of personal freedom. And it's precisely there, in that small gap, where the power of a truly wise person resides. When someone tries to provoke you, chances are they're expecting an impulsive, aggressive response. But if you choose not to react as they expect, you break the pattern and take control of the situation. You're no longer reacting based on someone else's script. You're creating your own. Often, fury is nothing more than a clumsy cry for attention or a poorly aimed defense. And when you choose to respond with calmness, you're showing that you're playing on a different level. It's not about weakness, it's about self-mastery. This is one of the most solid pillars of Stoic thought. What is within your control is your responsibility. You can't determine what others will do or say, but you do have the power to decide how to interpret it and how to act in response. That is true freedom. Applying this in real life means not letting yourself be dragged down by offensive words, not exploding in the face of frustration, not falling into empty arguments that only drain your energy. It means pausing, breathing, analyzing, and only then responding. Sometimes the wisest thing is to stay silent. Other times, it's to offer a clear but calm reply. The crucial thing is that your response is always a conscious choice, not an impulsive reaction. The Stoic doesn't believe they are immune to human emotions, but neither do they allow themselves to become slaves to them. They know that anger may knock at the door, but that doesn't mean they have to open it. They observe it, accept its presence, and let it go. And the more we train this ability for self-control, the stronger we become. Not to impress others, but to live in harmony with ourselves. So, the next time you feel anger beginning to rise, don't see it as an enemy. See it as a signal, as a test of your internal discipline. And when you choose to act with calmness, you're showing that there's no external provocation more powerful than the inner peace you've cultivated. Third, don't expose your weaknesses to just anyone. We all go through moments of fragility, times when we feel insecure, confused, vulnerable. And in the midst of those moments, it's natural to seek relief, to want to open up to someone, to unburden ourselves. But there's something very important we must keep in mind. Not every person who is willing to listen does so with good intentions, and not every companion is worthy of trust. That's why the Stoics offer us a clear and forceful warning. Don't place your weaknesses in just anyone's hands. Stoic philosophy encourages us to build inner strength, not to hide what we feel, but to learn how to manage it consciously. Part of that wisdom lies in recognizing that your suffering is something valuable, intimate, something that deserves to be treated with deep respect. And when you choose to share it with someone who is not emotionally prepared, or worse, someone who wants to see you fall, You're not finding comfort, you're exposing yourself. Epictetus reminded us that we must be extremely careful when choosing the relationships we cultivate. Because when you hand over your vulnerability without filter, you're really giving someone the detailed blueprint of your most sensitive areas. And while some will respond with compassion, others, driven by envy, malice, or simply ignorance, could use that information to hurt you. The Stoic is not a cold or distant person, but they understand that trust is not something given automatically. It is built step by step. There's a vast difference between seeking sincere support and going around handing out your sorrows as if they were casual topics of conversation. Sharing your weaknesses with people who lack the maturity to handle them exposes you to being misunderstood, mocked, or even manipulated. And after such an experience, it becomes very hard to recover the strength you once had. That's why you must choose wisely who you allow to glimpse into your inner world. Pay attention to the details, the consistency between words and actions, the way that person behaves when no one is watching. Not every shoulder offered as shelter is safe, and not every display of empathy is genuine. Keeping your pain to yourself, at least for a while, is not a sign of isolation or weakness. On the contrary, it is an act of courage. It's a way to protect your essence while you grow stronger. It doesn't mean you have to carry everything alone forever. It simply means there are right times and right people to share what is still in the process of healing. The Stoic life is grounded in self-awareness and the ability to discern. Knowing who to talk to, what to open up about, and what to keep private is an essential part of the journey toward emotional maturity. Not everything needs to be shared in order to be understood. Sometimes it's enough to write it down, meditate on it, or sit quietly and reflect. And little by little, what once hurt begins to settle on its own. Be careful with whom you let into your darkest parts. Not everyone deserves that level of intimacy. And the clearer you are about this, the more invulnerable you become. Because protecting your weak spots is not denying your humanity. It's understanding that even suffering needs a dignified and safe space to exist. Fourth, observe carefully, without needing to say that you're observing. We live in a time where everyone wants to stand out, to be heard, to grab attention. Social media has made constant self-display seem normal, while silence, paradoxically, has become almost suspicious. But in contrast to the constant noise where most people are trapped, Stoic philosophy invites us to take a different path, one that is calmer and deeper, the path of observation. Observe everything happening around you, but do it in silence. You don't need to declare that you're watching, just watch. Observing is not the same as judging. Observing is understanding, being fully present, noticing clearly what hides between the lines. It's about recognizing patterns, detecting unspoken intentions, interpreting gestures, phrases, and even silences, often more revealing than carefully crafted speeches. For the Stoic, the world is like a school open 24 hours a day. Every encounter, every behavior of others is an opportunity to learn about human nature, your own emotions, and how to carry yourself among others. But it's important to remember this. The moment you say you're observing, everything changes. People tense up, become cautious, put on masks, and begin to act in calculated ways. A good observer doesn't need to announce themselves. They remain attentive without standing out, present without being intrusive. They know you gain more knowledge when others behave naturally, not when they feel observed or judged. Seneca said that we should study human behavior the way a doctor studies the symptoms of an illness, with emotional detachment, patience, and a genuine intent to understand before reacting. When you adopt that calm and steady way of observing, you start noticing repeating patterns, hidden motives, automatic reactions that previously went unnoticed. But the most transformative part is that you also begin to observe yourself. You discover how you respond to arrogance, tenderness, ego, or hypocrisy. And by doing so, you cultivate self-control. That is the essence of Stoic thinking, knowing the world in order to deepen your knowledge of yourself. Understanding others not to manipulate them, but to prevent them from manipulating you. Observing without speaking is an art. It requires presence, but also humility. You're not there to judge, correct, or feel superior. You're there to learn. The more you observe, the more you understand. And the more you understand, the more capacity you develop to act wisely. That constant need to warn, correct, or confront begins to fade. In its place, a quiet understanding emerges that every human being is on their own journey, just like you. So slow down. Pay real attention. In a world overwhelmed by stimuli and distractions, being able to observe deeply is almost like having a superpower. And if you do it silently, your power multiplies. Because everything you calmly absorb turns into knowledge. And what you learn without noise transforms into inner strength. Fifth, never underestimate anyone, but don't reveal everything you know either. In life, it's easy to fall into two equally dangerous extremes: arrogance and naivety. Arrogance makes you look down on others, convinced that you know more, that you're superior, or that there's nothing valuable to learn from those around you. Naivety, on the other hand, pushes you to open up completely to anyone, as if everything you know is safe in anyone's hands. Stoic philosophy offers a path of balance. Never underestimate anyone, but also don't go around flaunting all that you know. The first rule is silent respect. It doesn't matter what someone looks like, what their social status is, or how they behave at first glance. You don't know their story, nor what they're truly capable of. The Stoic acknowledges that the human being is a complex creature, and that strength, intelligence, or even malice can hide in the most unexpected places. Looking down on someone is a mistake that puts you in danger, morally and practically. It shuts the doors to learning, limits your personal growth, and weakens your ability to protect yourself. The humility to recognize that anyone can teach you something is a fundamental Stoic virtue. On the other hand, carelessly sharing everything you've learned is a way of leaving yourself defenseless. Knowledge is a form of power, but a power that must be handled with wisdom. The Stoic doesn't need to impress anyone with grand speeches or intellectual displays to feel valid. They know that the more they speak, the more vulnerable they become. Often, by exposing their worldview, strategies, ideas, or even readings, they are handing over tools that can be misunderstood, trivialized, or, worst of all, used against them. Holding back some of what you know isn't selfishness, it's prudence, it's emotional intelligence. It's understanding that not every setting is suitable for planting what took you so much to build. Sharing knowledge requires discernment. You must evaluate the timing, the other person's intent, and whether that exchange is truly worthwhile. Talking too much can dilute the value of what you know, but speaking at the right moment with the right people is what transforms information into true wisdom. The Stoic doesn't live closed off, but they live with full awareness. They observe carefully, absorb, and understand how the world around them operates. They don't need to be recognized as the smartest person in the room, because their true strength doesn't rely on others' opinions, but on an inner firmness they've built through discipline and constant reflection. That's why they remain calm even when others question their ability, because they feel no obligation to prove anything. And at the same time, they treat everyone with respect, because they know that even someone who appears ignorant can offer a new perspective or an unexpected lesson. At its core, this Stoic teaching shows us that true intelligence makes no noise. It doesn't need to show off or justify itself. It protects itself through discretion and grows through respect for others. Knowing how to remain silent is as valuable as knowing how to speak. And not underestimating anyone is a way to keep your mind alert, while holding back part of your knowledge is a subtle and powerful way to take care of yourself. Sixth, turn silence into a tool of power. For many people, silence feels uncomfortable. It creates a space where distractions disappear, where there's no escape from one's own thoughts, and where the truth is heard without embellishment or filters. But for the Stoic, silence is not a void. It is a source of power. It is a deliberate choice. It is the decision not to react impulsively, not to speak without thinking, not to fill every moment with unnecessary noise. Silence becomes a tool that shapes character, strengthens self-discipline, and reflects a high level of maturity. In this era where everyone feels the urge to constantly express something, where opinions are thrown into the air every second and words lose their weight due to the urgency to speak, learning to remain silent becomes an almost subversive act. The Stoics understood this clearly. To them, anything that doesn't contribute to the development of virtue or the growth of wisdom is nothing but noise. The more you speak without a meaningful reason, the more you expose your thoughts, the more energy you waste, and the more disconnected you become from yourself. That's why practicing silence doesn't simply mean staying quiet. It means observing before acting, thinking before responding, allowing your thoughts to settle within you before turning them into words. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminds us time and again of the importance of looking inward before getting involved with the outside world. Silence is that meeting point between your inner world and what's happening outside of you. It is there that true discernment is forged. And when you learn to remain silent at the right moment, you not only avoid falling into empty arguments, you also show that you are not ruled by your emotions. You can feel anger, yes, but that doesn't mean you have to let it speak for you. You may be right and still understand that you don't need to prove it every time. In this sense, silence is a form of authority. It's a way of expressing, without saying a word, that you are in control of your mind. Moreover, silence exerts a subtle yet powerful effect in human relationships. It imposes a firm presence. It unsettles those who expected an immediate reaction. It creates space for others to reveal who they truly are, while you observe, analyze, and learn. Instead of rushing to respond, you choose to listen. Instead of filling the room with automatic words, you let the moment breathe. And in that breath, many truths rise to the surface. But silence is also a gift to yourself. It is an inner refuge, a place of clarity where you reconnect with your values, your intentions, and your essence. The Stoic seeks that deep silence as a shield against the demands of the outside world. From that quiet center, they choose their actions rather than being carried away by impulses. That's why you must cultivate silence not as an absence of words, but as the full presence of awareness. Use it to filter what truly deserves to be spoken, to protect your mental peace, to strengthen your inner balance. Speak only when your words carry more value than the silence you've built. And never forget, the one who masters silence possesses themselves, and the one who owns themselves is ready to face the world with true wisdom. 7th, listen more than you speak and learn from every person. Speaking is easy. Sharing opinions, telling stories, giving advice. All of that gives us a sense of control, of importance, of being in the spotlight. But often, the more we talk, the less capable we are of truly listening. And it's precisely in that space where we miss valuable opportunities to grow. Stoic philosophy proposes a radical shift in perspective. Speak less and listen more. And not just listen, but do it with real attention and a genuine desire to understand. The Stoics considered listening a form of active practice, a constant tool for personal growth. Epictetus, who spent his early years as a slave, forged his wisdom by quietly observing, listening in silence, and reflecting deeply. He used to say that nature gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a very clear reason, so that we listen twice as much as we speak. It might sound simple, but it's deeply transformative. When you choose to listen with true presence, you're not just waiting for your turn to speak. You're creating space for the other person, practicing humility, and recognizing that every human being, no matter how simple, different, or even difficult they may seem, has something valuable to teach you. Listening is an act of full presence, authentic patience, and sincere interest. In that receptive silence, the deepest learning is born, about others, about the world, and about yourself. The Stoic doesn't listen merely to agree or to oppose. They listen to understand. They filter, analyze, keep what's useful, and discard what is just superficial noise. They learn from the wise and the ignorant, from loyal friends and hidden enemies, because they know that every human interaction is a chance to sharpen their thinking and deepen their understanding. Listening more than you speak also strengthens self-discipline. Often we feel the urge to interrupt, to correct, to respond immediately, but resisting that urge is a profound exercise in self-control. And the more we listen, the more aware we become of the true value of our own words. We begin to speak with more clarity, with purpose, and with true precision. Speaking less doesn't mean disappearing. It means understanding the real weight of what you say. In practice, this looks like listening without instantly judging, without trying to win the conversation, without mentally preparing your response while the other is still speaking. It's stepping out of yourself for a moment and respectfully entering the world of another person with openness and curiosity. This applies in all kinds of relationships, family, work, social. The simple act of listening authentically already strengthens human connection. Stoic wisdom is quiet, observant, and open. It's built gradually, through time, through constant listening, and through genuine humility. The fool speaks endlessly because he thinks he already knows everything. The wise speak with restraint because they're aware of how much they still have to learn. So if you truly want to grow, learn to listen. Do it not just with your ears, but with an open mind and a receptive heart. Listen more than you speak, and you'll find that the world begins to reveal lessons you never would have discovered by talking nonstop. 8th, keep your achievements and victories private. Today, we live immersed in a culture where everything seems to need to be displayed. Successes, purchases, trips, transformations, even deeply personal moments. The urge to share everything has become so automatic that many people no longer allow themselves to enjoy their triumphs in silence. They announce them before truly understanding what they even mean in their lives. Stoic philosophy proposes the opposite. It reminds us that what truly holds value doesn't need to be validated from the outside. That's why keeping your achievements private is a sign of wisdom, inner strength, and emotional maturity. The Stoics knew that the desire for external recognition makes us fragile. Every time you feel the urge to showcase your victories, whether consciously or not, you're hoping for something in return: admiration, approval, respect. But all of that is external, fleeting, and often deceptive. Genuine satisfaction comes from having a clear conscience, from recognizing the effort you put in, from knowing that what you achieved holds deep value because of what it represents on your personal journey, not because of the reaction it may trigger in others. When you choose to move forward in silence, you protect what you've built. You shield yourself from envious looks, from outside judgment, from meaningless comparisons. More importantly, you protect your mental peace, because every time you reveal too much, you lose part of the control over your own success. People begin to project expectations, opinions, and even demands onto you that have nothing to do with your personal goals. Oversharing can turn into a burden when all you wanted was to celebrate a moment of happiness. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome and one of Stoicism's greatest figures, had all the power and recognition one could imagine. Yet, in his reflections, he wrote about the need to cultivate humility, to live with moderation, and to focus on the inner life. He understood that the truest glory is the one felt within the soul, not the one shouted before crowds. Because anything that is excessively displayed will eventually weaken. In contrast, what is nurtured in silence grows deep roots. Keeping your victories private doesn't mean you don't enjoy them or that you deny yourself celebration. It means you clearly understand where your true worth lies. It means your self-esteem isn't built on applause, likes, or public praise. It's built on your effort, your growth, and the silent path you've walked. In practice, this means yes, you can celebrate, but with those who truly matter. You can share, but with wisdom. You can feel proud without turning that pride into a performance. The more you choose to stand firmly in discretion, the more energy you build within. And when life demands endurance from you, you'll have the strength to face any challenge, because you won't have wasted your essence trying to impress others. You'll have focused on being rather than appearing. So keep your achievements private. Let your actions speak for you when necessary. And when they're not needed, continue your journey with lightness, like those who already understand that true greatness doesn't need an audience. Ninth, cultivate emotional detachment. Practicing detachment doesn't mean you stop feeling or that you become cold, insensitive, or distant from the world. Contrary to what many believe, emotional detachment has nothing to do with the absence of affection. It has everything to do with the full presence of awareness. It means learning to deeply value people, moments, and experiences without letting your inner balance become fully dependent on them. It's about loving authentically without becoming bound by invisible chains. And that's exactly what Stoic thinking proposes. For the Stoics, anything outside of our control should not disturb our peace. And that includes all external things, relationships, other people's opinions, outcomes, losses, praise, rejection. Everything that comes from the outside is subject to change, and in fact, it changes constantly. The Stoic doesn't harden their heart, but they do strengthen it. They don't shut themselves off from love, but they learn to be prepared. They accept that life moves in cycles, with meetings and farewells, with moments of joy and pain. That's why they choose to relate to the world with clarity, not dependency. When you begin to practice emotional detachment, you stop seeing people as indispensable pillars and begin to appreciate them as valuable companions on your journey. You realize that no one is here to fill the voids you yourself must heal. And by taking on that personal responsibility, you don't become distant. You become free. Free to love without needing to possess, to share without trying to control, to feel without losing your center. This principle also applies to loss. The Stoic calmly accepts that everything they possess can disappear, that what brings happiness today could vanish tomorrow. This doesn't come from a negative mindset, but from a conscious way of preparing for life's ever-changing nature. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself, "Everything you love, everything you value, will one day cease to exist or be transformed. And still, life is worth living, because beauty lies precisely in the awareness that nothing truly belongs to us." Emotional detachment doesn't mean disconnecting from life. On the contrary, it means diving into it with greater clarity. It means no longer suffering in advance. It means not falling apart in the face of an unexpected ending. It's allowing yourself to feel sadness, yes, but not drowning in it. It's being able to find serenity within, even when everything outside becomes unstable. To put this into practice means looking at your relationships with more objectivity, asking yourself what stems from an unresolved need and what comes from a genuine choice. It means redefining the limits of attachment, letting go of the illusion of control, and above all, remembering each day that your emotional stability must be rooted within you, not in the decisions or behavior of others. Emotional detachment, in the Stoic view, is a path toward personal strength. It's a way of living with greater balance, less weight, and more freedom. When you detach from expectations and accept the natural flow of events, you begin to experience something truly valuable: peace. Not because everything is perfect, but because, even in the middle of chaos, you remain calm. 10th, never reveal what truly affects you. Revealing what deeply wounds you may seem like an act of honesty, and in certain contexts, it can be. But it requires discernment. Stoic philosophy reminds us that anything we show outwardly inevitably becomes something others may use against us. Not because everyone is malicious, but because not everyone has the maturity or empathy needed to handle our vulnerability. That's why the Stoics advise us not to expose what truly hurts us, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. When you openly share what destabilizes you, what bothers you, or what makes you feel fragile, you're handing over a delicate part of yourself to an environment that is often not trustworthy. You're opening a door that can allow others, even unintentionally, to test your limits. Immature, insecure, or manipulative people might use that information to gain control, provoke reactions, or emotionally manipulate you. And when that happens, the problem isn't only with them, it also lies in the fact that you exposed yourself more than necessary. The Stoic dedicates themselves to self-knowledge precisely to identify their wounds and recognize their weaknesses, but they don't need to display them. On the contrary, They work on them calmly, in silence. They don't fool themselves into pretending to be invincible, but they understand that there is a right time and a safe space to express pain. Not every place is appropriate, not every person deserves your trust, and not every emotion needs to be spoken aloud. Controlling what you share with the world is a way of protecting your inner strength. It's understanding that feeling something doesn't mean you must show it all, that going through pain doesn't necessarily mean making it public. There's immense power in keeping what affects you safe within the shelter of silence. That silence is not repression, it is self-control. It's telling yourself, yes, this hurts, but it's not going to dominate me or define how others see me. To put this into practice means looking at yourself with courage, recognizing what shakes you without dramatizing it, and choosing to protect it, without turning every wound into a public story. Sometimes, true relief doesn't come from talking. It comes from understanding, accepting, and healing quietly. The Stoics believed that the serenity of the soul is closely tied to our ability to remain steady in the face of adversity, and that includes resisting the impulse to reveal what actually needs protection. When you learn not to react automatically, not to hand others the map of your emotional wounds, you become stronger. Not because you stop feeling, but because you know how to manage your emotions with intelligence and discretion. So the next time something touches you deeply, pause before telling anyone. Ask yourself if it's truly helpful for the other person to know, or if you're just seeking quick relief that might cost you later. Protecting what hurts you isn't about building walls, it's about building an internal fortress, and that is one of the most powerful virtues Stoicism can offer you. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You're now part of that small group of people who, instead of complaining about life, choose to learn, grow, and strengthen themselves from within. Seeking wisdom, especially the kind that transforms how you think and act, is an act of bravery, and also of virtue. You could have been distracted by anything else, but you chose to dedicate this time to yourself. That's rare and admirable. Now tell me, which of these teachings resonated with you the most? Which one are you already applying? Or which would you like to start putting into practice today? Write it in the comments, I'll be reading every single one. And if you don't feel like writing anything, just type, "Thank you," so I'll know you stayed with me until the very end. And of course, if you enjoyed this content and want to continue down this path of Stoic wisdom, subscribe to the podcast right now. Here we share reflections to help you live with more awareness, greater inner strength, and a deeper sense of balance. Stay steady on this journey to become someone more grounded on the inside and more serene on the outside. Thank you for being here, and until the next episode.